WC Turck here again for RevolutionandBeer.com. I was going to try to take you across to Little Presque Island, just over my shoulder here. Beautiful little island with a little land bridge, but as you can see, a little stormy today. There's some great waves. There's no way I was going to make it across. So what I thought I'd do is I wanted to talk to you about a friend's book, Chris Patterson's 21, the Perseverance, the Epitome of Perseverance. Started reading this book a couple of weeks ago. I have to tell you, I'm a novelist. I don't read a lot of fiction. I read mostly nonfiction. To that extent, I read a lot of history. I don't read a lot of opinion pieces. I don't read a lot of social pieces. It takes a lot for me to get involved in a book of nonfiction. There are a few books that really touch me, that I find really powerful. This book by my buddy Chris Patterson is one of those books. You need to know about Chris Patterson. If you're involved in any kind of activism, if you're involved in peace issues, if you want to understand gang mentality, if you want to understand the ways to solve some social issues that are affecting us right now, including the gun and violence issue in our inner cities, you have to listen to those voices that have been there. You have to listen to those voices that have learned some of those lessons and have persevered enough to come forward and tell us those lessons, to bring us those lessons. These people know. Chris Patterson knows because he lived it. I met Chris at an anti-violence meeting in Rogers Park, Chicago, about a month and a half ago. It was interesting. He had been doing this for a while. Obviously, he had written this book. And there I ran into some theater folks that I'll talk about in a moment, that are doing something really wonderful with this book and with Chris that you need to know about and that you can take part in. But I met Chris there, unassuming guy, dressed in a sports coat, clean-cut looking guy. You'd never know the life and the experience that he had that went into this book, 21, the Epitome of Perseverance. A book that he wrote. It's an autobiography about his life on the streets. He was putting together and working with Peace Angels in Rogers Park. This issue resonated with me because I live in Rogers Park, but also because I've been really involved. Brian and I have been really involved with peace groups on the south side of Chicago, particularly in Englewood and Woodlawn, some of those neighborhoods that are seeing the worst violence, the worst gun violence in the city. On our radio show on WCPT in Chicago, that was one of those issues that we were fighting a lot on the air. Talking about the gun issue, talking about the gang issue, talking about the violence issue. Two things came to mind to us before I start talking more about the book here, about how to solve that issue. The first one was obviously the gun issue and the availability of guns. The NRA and the right, the pro-gun lobby will tell you a lot right now about how, because they don't want guns restricted at all, because there's a market in it for them, but they will tell you how Chicago has the toughest gun laws in the country, and it still doesn't stop the violence. For a lot of people, that makes sense on the surface. And it's true. Chicago does have the toughest gun laws in the country. It's illegal to own a weapon in the city of Chicago. Again, the gun lobby will tell you that it doesn't stop criminals from getting guns. And that is absolutely true. However, when you get into the details, when you look at where the guns are coming from, you begin to see a different story. One of the issues that we were coming to was straw buyers, people with federal firearms licenses, gun store owners, gun shows and gun fairs all around the city of Chicago. Even gun dealers and gun proliferators far out of state are feeding guns into the hands of gangbangers and criminals in the city of Chicago. So while it's true that all the gun laws in Chicago don't stop criminals from getting guns, the fact of the matter is there's no way to stop criminals from getting guns in the city of Chicago unless there's a moat and a wall around the city of Chicago and you're searching everyone who comes in and out. But we know that's not true. Chicago's got wide open borders. It's easy to get guns in and out. Chicago Police Department will tell you that better than 70% of the guns that they seize in crimes on the streets of Chicago were legally purchased and given to the criminal. Usually the criminal that committed the crime, but if not that criminal, it's one or two hands between that legal gun owner, the person he gave it to, who then gave it to or sold it to somebody else subsequently. That's where we start talking about reasonable gun regulations and gun legislation, because something needs to happen in order to stop that. That's one aspect of it. And all this you can find online. This isn't secret information, and I would like you to verify this information. But the other aspect of gun violence in Chicago has to do with this. Hope. A really simple concept. Hope. You go to the south side and west sides of Chicago. Even on school days, you will see young men standing outside liquor stores, standing outside hangouts, in alleys, because there's no place for these guys to go. It's interesting to me, not really off the beaten path here, but a little bit off the beaten path. Somebody made a comment the other day with regards to immigrant rights, and that in order to make immigrants legal in this country, the undocumented immigrants, we're asking them to do a number of steps. Pay a fine, register, all of these things. But people in this country, primarily black people, because those are the people who are incarcerated most often, because of the systems we've created in this country, not because of anything inherently different about blacks in the United States. We've created that system, and now we're suffering the consequences of it. But people who are incarcerated do their time, come out, and then do everything right, still are not able to find jobs. 20 and 30 and 40 years later, while applying for a job, they still have to mark on an application that they were maybe busted for something as a 17-year-old. So on one hand, we're trying to help one community. On the other hand, we're doing nothing to help another community. And when members of that community get caught up in a system and are broken by that system, or make mistakes in the society based upon that system, we never let them live it down. Often they can't vote. They can't find adequate work. They can't redeem themselves in the eyes of the community. And that's wrong. And that comes down to hope. You have to give people a reason to hope. You have to give people an understanding that there's something more that they can do to better themselves. And that it's not only their efforts, it's the investment by the community in those people that helps them to do that. I want to read something from Chris's book. Again, we're talking about 21, The Epitome of Perseverance by Chris Patterson. A local Chicago author, grew up on the streets, went to jail, and is now doing incredible work, important work, for peace initiatives and anti-violence and anti-crime, particularly in Chicago. But I know I just heard recently, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, Chris, that he's also looking on the south side of Chicago to make bridges there, and to carry his message, carry some of the lessons that he learned to those parts of the city, and to make a difference there. So I just wanted to read something that I thought was really, really powerful. And if I could find it here very quickly, bear with me just for a second. Here it is. When I was growing up and I got older, one thing I didn't see in the hood was a Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts chapter. Even something as small as this further learning. In order to be able to dream, and this is the important, when I read this sentence, this blew me away. So powerful, so important, so fundamental. In order to be able to dream yourself out of a condition, you first have to know there are options open to you. Electrical, plumbing, carpentry. On a larger scale, disease and healthcare maintenance. If we could only make some progress, if we could get some business and property owners involved to teach those around them trades related to their professions, aren't they the ones suffering the most from all the lawlessness? But it was that one sentence that I thought was so powerful in Chris's, and this is on page 11, but to get here, take Chris's journey. It's a beautiful and powerful, sometimes shocking story. In order to be able to dream yourself out of a condition, you have to know there are options open to you. That speaks to that hope issue. Because we can law enforce ourselves to death. We have, in this country, we have the highest incarceration rate in Western civilization. And what has it gotten us? What has it done but create a class of people who come out of jail with limited or no hope? I'm not going to belabor this point too much. I really wanted to spend a moment talking about Chris's book. You can get this online. There will be a link to it on revolutionofbeer.com as well. We've talked to Chris. Come out and see Chris. If you're in the Rogers Park or Evanston or north side of Chicago, come out on a Saturday. Spend some time with Chris and the Peace Angels. Make a difference in your community. But again, I didn't want to belabor the point, but just talk about the importance of hope. Because a lot of these things are about fighting symptoms. But we want to find a cure for the disease. Hope is much harder. It's much harder to come by. It's much harder for a community to create and support. But it's far more necessary. And if you want to solve these issues, that's what's got to happen. I'm going to leave you with this for a minute. Talk to you later.